Just quick. The first question would be, what key life experiences have formed who you are today?
What key life experiences? Um, I would say who I am today. So I would be, can you be more specific? Because it's like, that's a
Um,
kind of a pretty general question.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think our maybe like professors, meaning more so in the scope of like childhood events that affected your design process, your design thinking. Because the reading that we mainly have right now is on how Charles developed his own emotional style of design. What makes him feel comfortable? What does he enjoy? What brings him fulfillment? So things like that.
so I was interested in drafting when I was in high school. As a junior, I took a drafting class, and then I liked it, so I took the drafting class as a senior as well. And
Mhm.
then there was a guy that came who was trying to sell a drafting school. And so he came to our class one day.
Okay.
What I got out of the drafting class, though, wasn't just necessarily how to read drawings, but it was doing the sketching. One of the assignments was to copy a little vignette of a house that has a driveway going up to it with plants all around it, and it was all in color. And that
Mhm.
was I did, and that was what drove me to my career, is those sketches.
Oh, really?
And I started finding the hardest part about the sketches were really the trees, I thought, and the
Mhm.
shrubs, and obviously the perspective as well, understanding how to actually create the vanishing points and create something short of having, because back then there was no like draft CAD program where you can put all that together like there is now.
Right. Hmm.
So I think that in short, the that drafting class got me onto my career because of the hand sketching that it introduced to me, which was really the whole genesis for me wanting to get into architecture, is because of the hand sketch.
I got it. Got it. So it really made you feel passionate about it.
It did. Yeah, I mean, it
Okay.
really drove me in, and then I was able to take my ideas and put them down and say, this is what I was talking about. I was trying to describe to you in words what I'm thinking about here as a solution to your problem. But this is the sketch that really kind of tells the story better about what I was thinking.
I get it. I get it. Would you kind of agree with the statement that like you get to blur the line between your imagination and reality? Like as soon as you imagine it, you can just put it right out.
That's right. So I mean, it's all about coming up with a solution. Um, there's lots of ways to skin the cat, but taking the idea that you in the middle of the night go, oh yeah, that could be a really good idea. That's how I could do it. Then take that idea, and now how do you get it across to whoever it is that is looking, that you're trying to help? Um, and that's with a sketch or a drawing.
Yeah, yeah, it really has a very beautiful effect to me. Especially when you have something that like let's say a client or maybe you're doing a commission for someone. Because I do portraits and they always had this certain idea. They always wanted to get out and they never could. So you keep talking and talking about it. And when you finally draw it for them, you know that expression on their face, like, oh, finally.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And then it gives them something to uh, kind of respond to now, because they'll
Mhm.
say, in general, yeah, you've really captured it, but now that I see this, then that actually has me ask more questions. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
they
you get
say,
deeper.
if you could now refine it a little bit further in this area, then I think you're really going to be that much closer.
Yeah, definitely. I fully relate. I feel like that's like an architecture clutch. It's like one of our things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then the next question will be, what are your core values and how are they reflected in your practice?
I mean, integrity is like a core thing for me. Um, being completely transparent and upfront about everything and anything that goes on with the project. Um, you know, to just always be straight from the get-go. Um, and I'd rather be upfront and tell them what they don't want to hear, but is the reality before I even get the project. Because then at
Okay.
least they're going in with eyes open, and I'd rather them not even get started in the project um, if they're not willing to understand and agree that this is really the reality of the situation. So
I
just be
see.
straight with them.
Okay,
Did you
okay.
do that?
Would that be something related strictly to budget, or could it be something else, like maybe a city ordinance
Oh
or
yeah,
like
all
a
of it. Exactly. Yeah, because it's budget, which is huge. That's something that I typically bring to my as my normal elevator speech. I
got it.
do so. What I usually say is I do a two-step design process, where a conceptual package is the first step, which is enough drawings to tell the story, and it
Mhm.
allows you then to take those sketches, and it's before I hire any engineers. I can take those initial concept sketches and you can hand them to a general contractor or two or three or four and get a preliminary cost estimate before you then pay me to do step two, which is then hire all the engineers and go get the permit and submit to the city. You at least know now before you do that second step what your ballpark cost estimate is.
Oh, that actually is that makes a lot of sense. It's very analytical. It's like it just gets
Yeah.
from point A to point B. All right.
Yeah, so people really tag on to that. They're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So that's a huge part of what my initial selling point is. So what was your original question?
It was just what are your core values and how are they reflected in your practice?
Yeah,
But it was the transparency, pretty
I
much,
think
that part.
transparency. Yep, and
Yeah.
being really honest and straight with everybody and telling them not necessarily, you're afraid sometimes to say something because they're going to go, well, if I tell them that, then they're not going to want to do it they're not going to give me the project.
Right, right.
Well, I mean, they may do that. They actually may pick you because they realize that you're the one that actually was upfront with them.
Yeah, but it's a trust factor because you're being like
Trust.
a real person.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Because
Yeah,
then
actually,
yeah,
I've been told that a couple of times, even about like my stepdad before. Like he gained a lot of his main clientele, like people that referred him, because he just kept it honest with them the entire time. You know
yep,
what he was able to do, what he couldn't do, but also how he could help them. You know,
yeah,
he just was just very positive with them. You know, he just gave them the best that he could, and it worked out for him.
yeah. I mean, what you just said is another part of what I truly am involved in these projects to help the people. And I think if you truly believe that, then it shows through in what you say and do, because then they realize that that's the case,
Yeah,
that you're actually
yeah,
helping, that they want you. This guy is actually trying to help me here.
yeah, yeah. It's more so almost like that, like agape love, like a familiar brotherly sisterly love. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like just things that is they're meant to assist both parties. It's not one-sided.
Uh-huh.
I'm helping you, you're helping me, we're helping the environment, we're being sustainable, we're helping the planet, we're helping animals, we're doing everything at the same time. We don't have to be so divisive or competitive.
Yeah. And then, for instance, I know you're asking me, talking to you as the client. I know you're asking me that you want me to do this. Here's a couple solutions to this problem. One of them is the one that you asked for. This is actually what you asked for, at least my interpretation. But then
Mhm.
here's another idea or two, just to be able to say, what if we didn't do this? Might be a better idea actually than what your idea was. But in the end, this isn't my project, it's your project. So I'm offering you these two because I believe that they may be better than what you suggested. But in the end, if you think that's what you want, then, I can't really not do, I'm not going to be Frank Lloyd Wright and say, no, you got to do it this way because that's my way.
Right. Yeah.
Project.
Yeah. Gotta have a little compromise.
You got a little compromise.
I guess it ties to the fourth question a little bit. What is your design process, as in, design thinking, how you visualize, and, how you realize certain ideas?
Okay, well, design process starts with listening to the client. They're basically going to give you a whole lot of words, and you're going to try to listen as best as possible and write that list of things down so that you can recall what they said. And I typically put that into my design proposal to reiterate all the things that they had verbally said that they wanted in this project. And then, so that's a constraint. And then another constraint is, of course, the site, because the site is going to have zoning requirements, for instance, setback, height restrictions. And then there's going to be potentially topography of the site that's going to drive your design to help you make decisions, really. So my process is sort of and it always depends. I mean, I like doing home remodels. I was also previous in my business, I was doing commercial tenant improvement, which is taking basically a remodel as well, but in a commercial environment, helping someone come in and converting the space into a bakery or into an office space or into various uses.
Right, like different renovations.
It's a renovation of an existing space, and then you convert it, and then basically maybe you change the use from one office use into a storage use or something, and maybe add a mezzanine in there or whatever. And so I was doing a lot of that. But either way, it's remodel, and so remodel is always, if it's a ground up, there's a lot of the same scope of work because you have to do everything. But in the remodel, sometimes you don't have to do certain things because it's already in place. It just depends.
I get what you mean. I did a little bit of work as an interior designer for a couple weddings. So I would always try to listen to whatever the client specifically wanted and adjust from there. Some people want, a white gown, blue background, simple plant life. Other people have a black gown. They want red lighting. They want, black roses. They want a different floor plan. So you have to kind of adjust to every single person a little bit.
Yeah.
And the company I was actually working for, they will convert this garage and storage unit into a wedding venue. So, they would just have us have a certain amount of materials, a certain amount of budget. Then we just pretty much move things around and figure out, okay, you put the bar over here, you put the chairs over here, you put the overall, display over here, or you might have to move it around here. There was one wedding where there was a very conservative view. They didn't want to have the bar visible. So we had to move everything inside, just making sure that the client was happy.
Yeah.
That ties into the fifth question. How do you collaborate with other individuals to realize your impactful work?
Sure. I mean, that's part of this business. There is, unlike an artist who has a brush with oil paints and they are the only one that paints that painting, an architect is a constant collaboration. From the very beginning, you have to collaborate, first of all, with the client, and sometimes the client is the husband and wife. And there are two different points of view and two different bosses, really, for me. So I have to kind of tell them, no, I need one of you to be the one that tells me what to do, and you guys work it out between the two of you of what it is you want, so that you can then direct me on what it is you want. So collaboration, then beyond that, of course, is just getting that work done from the various engineers, and potential designers. If you're basically just a project architect and you have to hire a designer as well, then you have to be able to collaborate with them and potentially their team to get the design, so then you can then present it to your other to your and see it through all your engineering and such to get it completed.
Yep, I get what you mean. Like you're always playing that quarterback role, always, all the time.
That role. Yeah. So it can be very wearing.
Understandable, understandable. You know, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yep, it is. I mean, that it's great to be the king and the queen of the country and of the city, but there's a lot of responsibility because they're the one that has to make all the decisions for everybody to be able to otherwise have a nice running little place for everyone.
And are held accountable.
And yeah, and then they'll be, yep, exactly.
Yeah. This doesn't tie into the next question, but do you have a favorite reading or architect that has made a large influence on you?
I mean, I read Fountainhead, which is Anne Rand. It's AHN is her first name, Anne, Ian, and then RAHN, I think. Fountainhead is a story that is between two architects and kind of the world of architecture, but it's about compromise because each of the two architects, one is very unbending, and it's either his way or the highway. And he'll lose projects because he believes that what his design was is the design, and there is no other design because this is what his vision is. And then it's about the other architect who is almost the opposite of that, where he's kind of unconfident in a sense, and in his design because he isn't really sure whether it's a good design or not, and doesn't necessarily want to defend it as well. But it's really the story of the two sides, the uncompromising, and then the one that compromises almost to a fault. So anyway, that was an initial that I was reading when I was during my upper division during the summer one year.
Okay, interesting, interesting. So it's basically two different ways of thinking and how they solve different problems. I have to read that. Last two questions. What will have the biggest impact on the future of architecture in your opinion?
I mean, the culture is going to have the biggest impact to me on architecture. It seems like there's a shift going on with the culture in the United States, with everybody being so divided.
Yeah.
And it's causing a lot of rifts in all these different areas, so it's going to affect housing, it's going to affect jobs, and in doing so, it's going to affect architecture, in a lot of different ways. As you know, people are not necessarily working at the office anymore, they're working from their house. So that changed architecture dramatically now. The office isn't what it used to be. Houses now is now a working place, a lot more than just a place to come home from work, and so it's different. And you can now live in a resort town and work because
That's true.
you don't need to be where 20 minutes from your office anymore. So that's a huge part of what I think architecture is.
Okay, I get what you mean. It's like the collective consciousness is shifting. People are becoming a little bit different. Okay. Then the last question will be, what advice would you give yourself if you were beginning in the profession today?
Let's see. Well, I would I would tell myself to spend as much time in the field, understanding how things really go together. To be a good designer, you have to understand really how the parts really go together. It's not about the aesthetic only, it's about the practical.
Got it. Got it.
So I would tell myself at the beginning to not only understand design, but also understand how construction goes together. And the only way to do that is to kind of do both. You have to kind of live in the field. There's no way
Yeah.
around it. And
It's
either
kind of like
that
the design and the engineering together.
together. What else did I tell myself? Just to be patient. You're not going to make a lot of money, but eventually it does pay off. It took me a good 10 years. Well, it took me 10 years. It took me probably 15 years to finally start making a decent wage. Otherwise, I was just a drafter, taking someone else's idea, and then they were basically managing me, and basically it was their ideas, and I was simply helping them, because I was an employee. And as an employee, you kind of have to do what your boss says.
I get what you mean.
But at the same time, at 5 o'clock, you can kind of go, and you kind of you have less writing on the job as an employee. But as a businessman, that you've made the commitment to the client personally. So now it's not 5 o'clock doesn't mean anything anymore. It's the deadline, the budget.
You gotta have like a different type of integrity with your work.
So that's one huge thing is, as a new person, if you can really understand the budget, because each project that you're working on has a budget, which is going to limit the time ultimately that you can spend on that project, because they only have a certain amount of money that they're going to be paid. So if you just burn a bunch of time, you're going to spend all your money, and then there's no profit left to be able to keep the lights on and pay the office and the computer for the new computers next year and such. So to understand the budget is a huge part of an architect. Not if you're just a drafter worrying about what your boss tells you to do, then you're not really thinking the bigger picture. You have to understand what they're dealing with and what is the bigger picture on the main project, and what limits do I, don't just tell me to do it. How many hours do I have to do this?
Okay. It's almost like a game of chess versus checkers. You have to think of so many various scenarios. There's so much background information that in order to win, you have to know a lot of different things. You can't just focus on one way of doing it, because you won't go anywhere.
Yeah, that is good. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So just give yourself time as a new person. There is so much to know, and you think you know, but you don't, because there's so much that you'll eventually pick it all up, and it just takes time to get the bigger picture so that you can have a better understanding of all of it. I don't know how else to say it. Until you do it, you don't really know, is the problem. You just don't know. So I was bucking for that raise, trying to get that extra 50 cents or $1 raise and such, because for various reasons I thought I deserved it, but and I just didn't know what I didn't know is the problem when I was in the earlier parts of my career.
Got it. Okay.
So, but I would say ask your boss, or try to understand really the background of the project, not just these red lines. I need to pick up these red lines, which is what you're going to do for the first 3 to 5 years of your project. Eventually, the red lines are going to start making sense. And then the red lines, you're going to say, well, I have a question on this red line. What do you want me to do here?
Mhm.
And if you've actually come up with a solution first, to say, what is it you want me to do here? Here's an idea that I had, and introduce that to whoever your boss who's running you. He's like, oh yeah, that's a good solution. And then eventually he'll give you more rope, more leeway next time possibly.
Good, good. Well, I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate everything. I'm gonna stay in touch though. I might need to do a little bit more research because we got to
Sure.
make a presentation, but I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Corwan, it was great talking to you. Good luck.